It is a routine that all of us do frequently every day, and that's washing our hands. But it turns out using those antibacterial soaps perhaps is not the best way. This is after the FDA has banned more than a dozen chemicals in hand soap, saying there's just no evidence that they actually stop the spread of germs. Joining me now is our medical expert, Dr. David Soria. The simple question I'll start with: do you use antibacterial soaps, or is mom's just wash up with soap and water?
Yeah, well, you're putting me on the spot here,
Still
Rox.
good.
And you know what? I don't. I really don't. I've never really bought into it, and I always knew that not that there was any science behind it, but soap and water is sufficient. That's all we've used for many, many years. And the reality is that I think the FDA acted responsibly here, not because that the triclosan in these antibacterial soaps is necessarily dangerous. It's more on the fact that it really doesn't do anything. And so,
what is it?
Well, it's a chemical that isn't antibacterial, but the fact of the matter is that it gets into the bacterial cell walls and takes about 2 to 3 hours to really work. So in the face of hand washing, it's almost useless.
Can it have residual effect, though, if it stays in, you're using it constantly and it's getting into your system?
Well, that's kind of the thought. The thought is that it does stay on the skin and can fight bacteria that way, but the fact remains that there's no science behind it. The data has not shown or borne that out. So the reality is that yes, it can have some detrimental effects. We don't really know what the long-term effects are, but we know that there can be some side effects to it. And number two, we're talking about this being in over 2,000 products nationwide. It's in 93% of all antibacterial soaps and lotions, and it's an added expense. So at the very least, it's an added expense to consumers for no benefit whatsoever.
We don't need to pay for something we don't really need.
Exactly.
Now, is there also a concern that these chemicals, using them all the time, the bacteria will build a resistance to them, and then we've now got another strain of bacteria out there, something out there that we aren't fighting?
You're exactly right. You're spot on with that. And that is that, of course, bacteria are smart. They're very rapidly evolving, and they mutate every day, every year, and certainly get used to whatever we put or throw at them. And that's why we see resistance to antibiotics every year. The more and more we use antibiotics unnecessarily, the more resistance we see. Just like with topicals, they will mutate to where they develop some protective form against these agents, and pretty soon those aren't going to be effective anymore.
So the bottom line is, if it's not an antibacterial soap or cleanser, it's not the end of the world. Wash your hands with warm water and soap, and wash frequently.
That's right. So the recommendation is, if you have them, don't throw them out. You can continue using them, but 20 seconds of soap and water is more than sufficient. You're
Turns
exactly
out,
right.
Dr. Soria, mom is always
Simple
right.
stuff.